great to see you today, Kev. So my first question is, how are you and the cyber program measured by the board?
So yeah, that's kind of an interesting question, right? Because there's a lot of kind of aspects to what you're trying to achieve. I mean, the main thing, I put a quote in a presentation recently. I think it was from Steve Katz actually in the 90s, but there's no such thing as security risk. There is only business risk, right? So I think a big thing we have to do is we security people are, we're all special, security is different, and all this kind of stuff, right? And it's not. Fundamentally, we are dealing with risk management, and we're dealing with security risk. There's other bits deal with resiliency risk or concentration risk or fraud risk or whatever else, right? And we are helping the organization manage security risk. So obviously, you've got a program and you've got a bunch of things you want to deliver, but you need to link them back to business risk. So I think you mentioned that first question around data leaks, right? So, businesses are obviously concerned about protecting their data because, it's the right thing to do. They want customer trust. They want partner trust. If you're regulated, regulators are going to, be really interested in that, and, GDPR and whatever else, right? So there's a whole load of things around why you really want to protect your data. So when you're doing, say, a data security program and go, right, we need to understand what data we've got where, we need to make sure it's labeled, we need to know who's touching it, we need to know how it's being used, we need to put controls in place around where it can be sent, all of those things. You link that program back to we're doing these things so that we can get data risk or data loss risk to within risk appetite, right? So it's link it back to what they're concerned about. And I think for every board, it's a bit like the sales thing. I think it's part of CISO's role is selling security, right, effectively, but it's understand their concerns. So if you're in an organization that, say, doesn't handle a lot of sensitive data, maybe it's doing kind of marketing things or something else, and you don't want to lose data, but it's not the biggest risk. You wouldn't go in with, hey, here's my massive data security program to deal with this huge risk of data security when it's not their biggest worry, right? If you're an organization, say a financial one or pharmaceuticals or something where you're really concerned about your data and experimental data, whatever else, that angle might work. If you're somewhere where they're really, really concerned about getting product out the door and moving fast, you may leverage using these security tools in the SDLC and these processes in the SDLC really help us go fast and safely, because we're going to shift left and whatever other buzzwords, but enable developers and product teams to move really fast and securely so they can deliver your product super fast. And all of these automated tools that we're asking to purchase and implement, and the automated processes enable that fast movement, but also safely and securely. So you can try to understand, it'll vary from board to board, but understand their key concerns. I think a really good bit of advice in that space is speak to some of the board members first, or the exec as well, because you probably talk to your exec more often than you do the board. But whenever you're trying to get people on side, speak to some of them first, get a few pre-meets, ideally have some kind of supporters in the room who've already taken through what you want to talk through, so that there's some people understand what you're talking about and kind of support it, but you've also got people's concerns. So what is your biggest worry? So one of the slides I've pulled together recently is a deck, and it's basically got all the different bits of the business, so that the exec are part of, so operations and HR and finance, and I've kind of done a little wiggly line through all of it, and then a few bits by each one about why security is important to their area. So to really highlight that it's not, hey, security off in the corner, whether it's protecting colleague information or whether it's managing risk of financial loss or enable product to move fast, have some examples for each area that the board or the exec are responsible for. So it really brings home to them why it's important to them and their bit of the world, not just kind of, hey, this abstract, we do security over here.
That's really interesting, because that's definitely something that came up in our physical meet that we had a couple of weeks ago of having your allies. It was put on the board and being able to have that relationship with them outside of your board meetings and so Well, thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. We will get this out to the audience as soon as possible. And this will all go towards our insight report that we are building around risk resilience and reputation, CISO and the board. But a massive thank you to Kevin for joining us and giving his perspective and his experience and knowledge. So appreciate the time, Kevin. And thank you for Jody for running the session.